Believe it or not, Procreate does not have a gradient tool yet. But don't worry, here are 2 methods you can use to add gradients to your illustrations in just a few taps. The first method is the method you will want to use if you want to create a gradient with specific colors, so it's a very important one to learn. The first thing you're going to need is an element to apply the gradient to, of course. And that element needs to be on a layer on its own, and the background needs to be transparent, because we are going to activate our new friend Alpha Lock, which you might remember from the last episode of this series. A little reminder, Alpha Lock locks the pixel on a layer, meaning you cannot add new pixels to it. So whatever was transparent on the layer when you first activated Alpha Lock will remain transparent even if you try to draw over it. To activate Alpha Lock, you just swipe the layer towards the right with 2 fingers. And you can see that it worked if a little grid shows up on the preview of your layer. From there, you can quickly brush over your elements to add the other color you want in your gradient. And here, the brush you use does not matter. We're really just focusing on the colors and the rough placement of them. Then once you added your colors, tap on the magic wand icon here on the top left to open the adjustment menu and select Gaussian blur right here. This will let you blur your elements, creating a gradient between the colors you place down. To add more blur, swipe your finger towards the right, and to remove some blur, swipe your finger towards the left. If you need to deactivate Alpha Lock at any point to draw something else on that layer, just swipe the layer again towards the right with 2 fingers, the little grid will disappear from the preview, and you'll be able to draw wherever you want. Okay, so the second method is my absolute favorite because I find it to be super intuitive, and I always end up finding gradients I genuinely would not have thought of otherwise. So once more, we're going to start with an element that is on its own layer, but this time we do not need to activate Alpha Lock. Instead, go ahead and tap on this S-shaped icon right here on the top left to activate the selection tool and set it to freehand in this new selection tool menu that just opened right there at the bottom of your screen. Here, also make sure you are working with the add mode so you can select a new area and double check that color fill is not on, so not highlighted in blue. If it is blue, just go ahead and tap on it. It's going to deactivate it. From there, go ahead and draw a selection on the part of the element where you want the other color to be. Then tap on the gray circle right here to close your selection and pick the feather option in the middle of the selection tool menu. This is going to let you create a gradient in the selection itself, which I know probably sounds a bit weird and crazy, but bear with me, it's going to feel like a magic trick when it starts coming together. The exact amount you use here for the feathering depends on a bunch of factors like the size of your element, the size of your canvas, the size of the area selected, and how soft or hard you want the final gradient to be. I find I often gravitate to more or less 30 or 40%, but this is really something you can experiment with to find what works best in the specific case of whatever illustration you're currently working on. Now, once you have your feathered selection, head to the adjustment menu and pick the first option, hue, saturation, and brightness. You can then play with the 3 sliders to change the color in your selected area and create that super intuitive gradient I was talking about. For example, if you're trying to add shadows, then you can play with the brightness slider and probably the saturation slider as well a little bit. If you're trying to add a gradient that feels more like different colors, you're going to play with the hue sliders. So really, this is something that opens up so many different options for you. Now, if you find that your gradient is either too soft or too hard, just tap on the screen with 2 fingers to undo until you are completely out of the selection thing and start over again, which I know might seem like a lot at first, but after just 5 minutes of playing with the selection, feathering, and the hue, saturation, and brightness tool, I promise you're going to get a really good feel for what they both do and how they both work. And you're going to see that this method is incredibly powerful and quite quick once you know how to use it. Before I let you go, I want to give you my top 3 tips on how to use gradients to really bring your illustrations up a notch in just a few seconds. So tip number 1 is to use gradients as a base for your shading, because when you think about it, quite a lot of the time light sources are higher up, which means even if you were to remove all the harsh shadows in an environment and on the elements that are within that environment, you would still see some very soft lights and very soft shadows on everything, and those are usually gradients. So if you look at me right now, you see I have this very harsh shadow here under my jaw, where my head is casting a shadow on the rest of my body. But the top of my head is closer to my light source, which is right here, than say this part of my arm, which is further away. And so this part of the skin will be a little bit lighter than this part of the skin. So this is a great use case for method 2, where you would select the bottom part of each element in your illustration, and then with the hue, saturation, and brightness, decrease the brightness just a little bit to start building those shadows really quickly and easily. Tip 2 is one that took me a long time to think about, but once you know it, it just makes so much sense. And that is to add color variation to elements that are organic, so that are not man-made. Because if you think about it, something like hair or a leaf in the back is rarely going to be just one uniform color. If I'm making something like this cup right here, I'm going to put a paint that is going to be the same throughout. Of course, light is going to affect it, but still the base paint is going to be the same throughout. But things that are growing or that are not man-made are not like that. And if you start introducing a little bit of color variation, so I'm not talking about this crazy big gradient that is super noticeable. I'm really just talking about some subtle color shifts here and there. And yeah, your hair, grass, foliage, things like that, you're going to see that the final illustration is just going to look so much richer. This is a good use case for method 1 because you can plop down quite a few blobs really quickly and then just blur. And really, this is something you're barely just going to notice as you're doing it, but it is one of those little details that is going to make your illustration feel more pro. Tip 3 is probably my favorite and is kind of a little bit of a combination of tip 1 and tip 2, and it is to use method 2, so the selection gradient method, to add gradients in your skies. You could just go ahead and draw a uniform blue sky. That is totally fine, but trust me, there is so much more life you can bring and so much more interest you can bring to your illustrations by creating that gradient. This is how you're going to really quickly be able to introduce different times of day or even different season just by adding that little gradient. It can be a gradient within the blue, so just a paler blue or a darker blue. You could start introducing some pinks and purples and oranges to mimic dawn or dusk. You can introduce more grays to have maybe more of a kind of a wintry vibe to the whole thing. So really, method 2 for skies is an absolute game changer. And just like that, you're now equipped with not just 1, but 2 methods to add gradients to your art. In the next episode of this series, I will share with you my favorite tool to fix illustrations that just don't look quite right. So make sure to subscribe right here so you don't miss it. Then once that is done, check out this playlist to discover other hidden Procreate features like how to add outlines to your art and drop shadows. I'll see you in the next video.